Welcome to the LLM Guru, and in today's video I'll show you how to implement your own AI chatbot using GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, two of the most powerful language models, into a web-based interface. I'm Yassine, and I'm excited to guide you through this project. Let's get started. So before we dive into the code, we actually first need to go ahead and create an OpenAI account. So the way that works is you're going to go ahead and open up a new Chrome browser. Let's go ahead and log into the OpenAI website. Click on the API link over there. And then we're going to go ahead and log in. Once you log in, we can go ahead and click View API Keys. Generally, you will not see these new API keys. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and revoke them. And then you'll go ahead and click Create New Secret Key. We'll call this GPT Chatbot. And we'll go ahead and create it, and we'll make sure to copy this link right here so that way we can use it later on. Make sure you copy it and you store it somewhere safe, because you actually cannot access this key after that. Once we have that done, let's go ahead and create a new folder in our Windows Explorer and then open up that folder in VS Code. Once we open up that new folder in the VS Code, it can be an empty folder. We're going to go ahead and do Control-Shift-P to open up our little command interface right here. And we're going to go ahead and type in terminal, create new terminal right here. We're going to go ahead and open up a terminal, and we're going to go ahead and use node.js to create our project. If you don't have Node, then you should probably go ahead and install it. I'm not going to go through the steps of this, but basically just go on the node.js website and follow the steps there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and type in npm init, create our project. It's going to go ahead and ask you to put in your package name. Go ahead and just type in enter. Test project is good. We can just skip through all this, type enter, and now we have our package.json folder. Let's go ahead and go to our extensions tab, and let's install some extensions. The first extension that we will install is we're going to go ahead and install JavaScript ES6 code snippets right there. You can go ahead and click on the extensions bar on the bottom left, and then go ahead and search for JavaScript ES6 code snippets and install it. Once you've installed that, next thing that we can install is ESLint. This will help you keep your code nice and clean, and will give you essentially compiler-like reaction for a non-compile time language. Essentially, ESLint will help you enforce consistent coding styles and catch potential errors or problematic patterns in your JavaScript. We'll go ahead and install this extension. Finally, I recommend installing a formatter. The one that I use is Prettier, but any formatter that you like is good as well. Then now we can go ahead and go back to our file explorer, and we can go ahead and create a new file called index.js. So now we're going to install a few packages. So what we're going to install, we're going to go ahead and go npm install express. We're going to go ahead and install OpenAI, body, and core. Go ahead and install all of those components. Actually, we're also going to add one more, npm install.env, for use our environment packages. So we can go ahead now here and do what we can do is we can go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it .env. Now that we have .env here, go ahead and put in our codes. When you put in the codes, it will be organization equals, and then your API key, and then your organization key you can find on your settings page in AI. Then you can put in your API key as well. So this is where we put them, and then we can save them here, and we can go back to index.js. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and follow the code from the OpenAI website. So in our API, what we're going to do is when you go back to the home screen of the OpenAI, we can go ahead and click on GPT, and this gives us the API for how to use the GPT-3 and GPT-4, GPT 3.5, and GPT-4 models. So this is an example of how to use a completion, which is actually what we are going to do. So let's go ahead and do that. We will essentially be following this model. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and and OpenAI API from OpenAI. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pass in const configuration. Configuration takes in a parameter, and now this is where we're going to go ahead and put in our configuration. So now the way that we're going to do this, we're going to actually go ahead and say import.env slash, there we go. And this will import our .environment package that will allow us to use our .environment.env file. So what we can do is we can say organization is going to be our process.env. Now the good thing about this is that it keeps our code nice and safe. So when we push it up to any Git repository, it keeps it nice and safe. We're going to do the same thing for the API keys. API key is process environment.api key. Fantastic. Next, we're going to initialize our configuration. There we go. Now we finally have our configuration done. Now that we've created our configuration, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to actually create the completion. We're going to say const completion, and we're going to pass in our model, which is either GPT-5 or GPT-4, depending on whichever one you want to use. I would recommend starting off with 3.5, and then later on we can move to GPT. And the next thing, finally, that what we're going to do is we're going to pass in our prompts. Pass in our prompts. We're not actually going to be passing in prompts, but we're going to actually be passing in messages. And messages is going to be an array. And in that array, we're going to store messages, which are stored in the form of, first we're going to pass in a role. So the role can be user, right? Which is the person who was actually asking the machine. Then after that, we're going to have the content of the message. So we'll say here is you can pass in the message. We can say hello. And now what we can do here is we can finally display our message. Completion.data.choices of 0. And now we can go ahead and run in our terminal here and say node index.js, and it gives us an error. So the error is that we actually need to go ahead and go to package.json, go right underneath our main, and type in our type. And we're going to say instead of common.js, it's go ahead and save that, give it another run, and now we get our.
We had made a mistake in the naming of our variables, and also the model is not GPT-3.5, it is GPT-3.5-turbo. So those were the corrections that we needed to make. But after running that, you will see that our code runs well.
As you can see, once we run our code, we get a response of hello, how can I assist you today, from the role of the assistant. So now let's go ahead and figure out a way to do this so that way we can see it on a browser. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and import Express, and then we're going to go ahead and import body parser, and as well as cores. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our app. Then we're going to go ahead and set our ports to be something like 1000. And then we're going to go ahead and say app.use body parser JSON. And then we're going to go ahead and say app.use. Now that we've done this, we've set up our app, and now we can go ahead and wrap our completion in our app. So we can say app.get. But then we can go ahead and take our completion and paste it in between these brackets. Now we bring in our console.log up here, but instead of doing console.log, we're going to actually do rest.json. Now doing that allows us means we should wrap our completion.data in a curly brace here, and then the completion is this completion. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and listen to this app through a specific port, which is the port that we define. We're going to go ahead and save that. We're going to go ahead and run node.index.js, and then going ahead and clicking on, need 2 slashes here. I'm going to go ahead and rerun that. And then going ahead and clicking on that. Clicking on that allows us to see our Chrome, and now it shows up on our website. On, well, not really a website, but we can see it on the web. Now back to our Visual Studio Code. Now I think it's time to make this interactive. We'll change it from being a get a request to being a post request. And then we'll pass in a string of messages instead of having just one message. So we're going to say const message. And then we're gonna go ahead and listen for a message that will be passed in as part of that post request. Then we'll pass it directly into the API. And then we can pass it in like this message. Okay. Now, next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna actually create a front end so we can actually push those messages across HTML. And then we'll just go ahead and Google for basic HTML starter, and I'll link the code below. We're going to go ahead and start off by replacing the header to our own title, and then we're going to go ahead and create a form, and in it we're going to in that form have an input, and with that input we'll have a button. This is where we will prompt our AI. Next we'll create a div for storing the logs of our chats. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our own script so we can just get rid of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a couple different variables. We're going to have first our chat log, which will be the documents that we get from the chat log div. We'll also do that again, but for the messages that we are storing. And then finally, we will query for our form. And finally, we need a variable for our forms. Finally, we need a variable for our form, which we'll do that through document.querySelector. Now we're going to go ahead and add an event listener for our form. On every time we submit our prompt, we're going to go ahead and prevent default. And now we're going to go ahead and store our message text in a new variable from message.value, and then we'll go ahead and reset message.value so that way we can see the submission, so that will feel like we actually submitted our text. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new variable called message element, which we will create element in the form of a div. This message element will store our message that we are submitting and then display it in the history. And then we'll go ahead and create the HTML code that we will then add to our chat log. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure that we put this at the top of the messages. So we're going to go ahead and have our chat log scroll. Now we're going to go ahead and make a fetch request, but really it's going to be a post request. And we're going to make this fetch request from the original URL that we had from our port that we made earlier, so from port 3000. And now we're going to go ahead and add some configurations to our fetch request, one of them being the method, which is going to be through a post, whoops, capital P there. And then we're going to go ahead and give ourselves some headers, one of them being the content type, which will be application/JSON, and we'll go ahead and pass in the body, which will be JSON.stringify, and then we'll pass in our message. Now we're going to append a couple .then statements. After we take our response from the post request, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing that we did earlier to our message text. So we're going to go ahead and create a couple message elements, and then these are going to be for the response from the OpenAI GPT model. So we're going to go ahead and essentially just do the mirror of what we did for the messages that the user would send. Now we should be all good to go. The only thing now that we need to do is go ahead and install Live Server from the extensions tab. It's a fantastic extension because now it lets us run our HTML code directly from our IDE with the simple click of a button. We made a couple errors, but we realized that we just messed up in our div class messaging, in our div class tag, and in the printing in the div class, which is data.completion.content. After we run that, we should be able to get the desired result. Going ahead and clicking on it, we see that we get our accurate response. Perfect. Congratulations! You've successfully implemented GPT 3.5 into a web-based interface using VS Code, JavaScript, and HTML5. Remember, you can find the complete code for this project in the video description below, along with any additional resources to help you further explore GPT 3.5 and AI. It's been the LLM Guru, I'm Yassine, and thanks for watching.